Hello, I am Karen Ray. I'm the founder here at Fave Lifestyles, and I am so thrilled to be introducing Jodi Schilling. She is one of our selected authors in our book that's going to be coming out in December of 2024, Being Brave, hashtag celebrating 1 million women and their courage. And Jodi, welcome to Fave and welcome to, congratulations on being selected and your story for the book, because it is going to touch many, many women's hearts. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be selected as one of the authors for the book. So I'm glad
Yeah,
to be here.
excellent. Yeah, so I just want to read just a moment of your, or a little bit of your bio here. And I actually meant to ask you a question before. And because on the bio it says Jodi Schilling, and so MS, is that a master's of education?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. I wasn't exactly sure how you're supposed to say that in a bio when you're presenting it. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's a master's in education. That's it.
okay, is a decades long educator and certified life coach for women, passionate about transforming life's challenges into opportunities for deeper love and connection. I just love that. I think everybody is really wanting connection right now. And so I'm so thrilled that that's a piece that you help women with. I'm going to continue here with you a little bit more about you. A thought leader in emotional intelligence and mental health, Jodi empowers women to embrace acceptance and lead with grace in their families and professional lives. Through practical strategies and compassionate guidance, she shows women how to thrive as leaders, navigate mental health challenges with resilience and authenticity. Jodi believes in the power of brave stories to inspire growth and uplift others. And Jodi, I have worked with you and you have helped me through my brave story and to get through it, because ladies, we all have these brave stories, and Jodi's a girl to help you get through some of that. So, oh my goodness. So you have been working with kids, moms, all these different things in so many different areas. Thank you for all the work that you do.
Yes, thank you for having me again.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we talk, we're going to talk a little bit about your story. And ladies, today's episode is not about the story itself. We're going to talk a little bit behind the scenes of what it's like to share your story, because it is a brave adventure just to, okay, first admit there was a story, then write it down and to
Yes.
share it with the world. Oh my goodness, that is something in itself. So let me just share a little bit about what the story is. Her story is called Changing Fear to Courage. It's already there. Jodi's reflects on how her childhood experiences of protecting her family shaped her inner strength and resilience. Through the challenges of raising children with special needs and facing personal trauma, she discovers the courage had always been a part of her life, helping her embrace her worth and overcome fear. Wow. It
Yeah.
was already there. So Jodi, tell us a little bit, as you heard the call to share a brave story. I mean, because I know you probably have a lot of brave stories. What inspired you to tell this story in particular?
Yeah, I think I might have shared with you when you first put it out there, if do you have a courageous story, or is there a story that is a part of your life that you think might help people? And the original thought that I had was more recent. It wasn't the story that I sat down to start telling. And then when the questions were there on the paper in front of me, what started coming up, I think, was what needed to come up. It was a story that I often do this with the women that I work with. I talk about the stories that we have that we tell ourselves over and over again that maybe aren't the stories we really want to tell about whatever happened. And in this case, as I sat down to answer those questions, and it took me back to being 4 years old, I realized that story isn't the way I had thought of it all those years wasn't maybe the way that I wanted to think about it anymore. And maybe it didn't serve me. And it really
Oh,
was just coming out as I was answering those questions. I was having these kind of realizations. And so that was my experience. It was almost a surprise to me, even me, to sit down and do that and learn as I was going
oh,
what how much courage I even had. Like it was a really interesting, um, just a total revelation, I guess, as I was telling that.
oh,
And it just flowed in, like, without having to edit or rewrite or think anything. It was honestly one of those moments where it felt like this is what I needed to do for my own healing, really, in a way.
mm.
So that was my experience.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so that I have a feeling you were not the only one that experienced that because I know a couple ladies have started to write their story and ended up writing something totally different than, again, what they thought they were going to
Yeah.
write.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like you said, it maybe just is something that really needed to come through and needed to be told in a different way that you were maybe telling yourself. I love that.
Yeah.
And what comes out on paper, especially I think, so Kathy Sparrow has helped us develop these questions to help you lead you through your story. And ladies, when you come and share your story here at Fave, it's not as much about the circumstances of what happened as it is about your journey through the story. And that's really, so this is really interesting, Jodi, because how you work with women. You
Yes.
help them see the circumstance. What were those thoughts around it? Which is kind of what we did here too. Is what's the circumstance? What was that pivot point? What were you thinking? And you
Yeah.
help women. That's what you help women do too. And when you coach them, and then what were those feelings that happened while you were walking through it? So were you surprised at some of the feelings that came up for you?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yes. I think I think because the framing was around courage in
Hmm.
particular, I was having these realizations as I was answering the questions that I had more courage than I really thought I did. And I think that when you posed it to all of us, that this idea that as women, I don't think that we embrace the fact that we're courageous. We tend to make ourselves smaller. We don't go out there and wave our, like, I'm great, I'm super strong. Like, and
Right.
so we have a lot of conditioning that keeps us from, the way we frame things, I think it comes a lot from the conditioning that we have, in all the different ways. And so because I had that framing of being courageous and then I was going through and answering the questions, I kept going, oh my goodness, I was stronger than I thought I was, or that that was an example of courage that I didn't at the time know that I had. And so those were some of the surprises and the feelings I had. And one of the feelings that came up for me that I think goes along with that idea of healing is that I had some feelings of being proud of that little girl who was pretty smart and strong.
Yeah.
Like I look back and that wasn't the way I had thought of myself before. And
Mhm.
so to be able to feel pride was one of the surprise feelings that I had. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
well, thank you for sharing that with us. So, ladies, as you're sitting there, thinking back on a story maybe where you were brave, that's really interesting to think of those feelings. It's like, well, maybe I didn't see myself as that. And maybe this is a good way to rewrite the story that you've been telling yourself all these times
Absolutely.
and all these years. So, one of the things, too, I was curious about as you started to write this, did you have that title in mind, or is that something that came through as you were writing the story?
Yes, I did not have a title at first. That was something that at the end, it I think the last question was what made me feel like that just came to my mind. As I was wrapping it up and saying, like, at the very end, what would women need to take away from this story? What would be my
Mhm.
purpose in sharing it? And And I feel like that was really it. It's that we don't always know that we already have the courage in us. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So, ladies, right now, I just want to reach out to you and recognize, you know what? I don't know where you feel it. I'm feeling it right here is that that courage is there. And I think courage in some practices, it resides in your lungs. And so I think that's probably why it's right there. And it has a color. And so what color do you see? I see silver and that shiny, that shiny silver like a warrior.
yes, yes,
Yeah. So, and I love that. So, again, the title of her story is Changing Fear to Courage. It's already there. And
yeah,
that is already there is just so powerful that, and, to celebrate that it's already there. Like you said, Jodi, that sometimes we're conditioned to be small or we've already got it, I've got it, and I've got it girl thing, and
yeah,
that we won't always recognize those moments where, what, we have just gone through something really, really tough. Or maybe it's, in your story, as it's been over, your childhood over many, many years, and to reflect back on that and see that courage that was already there.
yeah. And I think the other piece of it too is that when we think about our identity and who we really are, if we have a component of us or a part of us that is our courageous part,
Mm.
we can bring that out more. We can recognize that that exists in us in different times and places in these stories that we have. And and then having that awareness of being someone who's identifies as courageous or brave, that just kind of gives you a different approach to the world if you feel like that's a part of who you are, right? And if you don't uncover that and you don't give the brain wants to find evidence of whatever stories we have. And so when we change that story, that maybe we felt like we experienced something very painful or very difficult, and we don't see ourselves as powerful in that situation. When we change the story and we see the courage that we had, then that's how we can apply it to other, as we're whatever stage of life we're in, we can apply that. And I think that that was the other realization I had as I was writing that. I was like, oh, I see a pattern here, right? It just wasn't from childhood. It was then as, getting ready to launch as a young adult and then choosing a career and then like the goals as, as a mother, as a wife and mother. And then since that time. And so when you see that pattern, your brain goes, oh, that's really is who I am. That part
Mm.
of me is there and it's been there all the way through. And I think that's really powerful also to
Yeah.
recognize, yeah, recognize that in yourself, not just from the single story, but throughout your life.
And yes, I love how you say that. So, ladies, as you're thinking back on a story, I love what Jodi says, look back and see that, start recognizing that pattern. And Jodi, I have done that when I wrote my story too. So, ladies, whether you actually write your story and hit the submit button or
Right.
not, if you just write it for you, even
Yeah.
see what comes up for you. Maybe it's healing, but I always do caution women, you've got to be through the story. You have to be on the other side. This is not for when you are in the midst of a story. You have to be on the other side because you have to be able to see the hope, the courage, the bravery, or the lessons that you need to learn from the story.
Yeah.
Or those magical moments that, like Jodi said, about recognizing some patterns or something really magical, but I'm feeling proud about, wait, I did have courage. I did. And look how I was brave. And maybe, for each person, brave is something different. So how did you describe the brave that you wrote down in the story? Do you remember how would you define that? Was it a surprise about how you wrote what brave means to you?
Yeah, I think that my definition is about the flip side of fear, that it is related to fear, that I think that we've kind of, think that fear is a bad thing in a
Mm.
lot of ways, and yet we don't have an opportunity to demonstrate being brave or having courage unless we feel afraid first. They have to almost go together. And so that, I don't think that's exactly how I defined it in the my
That's
story,
very good.
but I know there's a correlation
Yeah.
between, right? And so that's where I think I felt like the experience of writing what came out that I wasn't even planning to write, but that idea that yes, I could say that I was a scared little girl and I could kind of give my brain more evidence of being in fear or just thinking of that experience from almost a victim place as opposed to thinking of it as being brave and having courage. And so I think because fear and courage go so closely together, you can apply that to any time in your life when you have experienced fear, right?
Oh, so here's an interesting thought, and it looks like so we've got some people watching too. And Sandy says that's amazing, Jodi. And so one of the things so there's that fear, and sometimes you talked about being a victim. A lot of us can go be the victim, but if you look a little bit deeper, maybe as you're looking at that, look at the brave actions you've taken
Yeah.
instead of how you're the victim or the circumstance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And recognizing and that might be different for each person, what that
Absolutely.
looks like. Sometimes, ladies, it is brave as you're walking through something really difficult to get up and take a shower.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Or to do the dishes, or talk to somebody, or whatever it is. Sometimes it's a big thing, but sometimes it's just those small little steps, or even taking a step, or changing your thought from, you know what, maybe I'm not the victim here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm acting very brave in a circumstance that's very, very difficult.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what if we celebrated it? Celebrate that's like, dang, I'm pretty darn brave, And what if we took a new attitude towards what brave is, and that it's okay to be brave?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And I think that the other thing, as you were talking about, like, it's different for each of us. I think that when we tell ourselves something over and over, it can keep us in a place that feels safer. But if you kind of look at it again and say, wait a second, if I tell a story about a difficult time and I keep repeating the same, like, that, wasn't fair, or I was like, not whatever, pain I had to go for, like people shouldn't have to go through that, or, when you get in that loop,
Yeah.
then it's kind of a protective place. But I think that this is where the courage comes in when you are willing to look at it differently. That in itself is courageous, I think. You know,
Yes.
right? And but I don't think we don't have this awareness that we're stuck in a story that isn't, it feels protective, but it isn't really, right? It's not allowing us to grow and move on from it, or reframe it in a way that serves us better. And that's when our courage is kicking in, I think, when we decide to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jodi, so here's the thing, ladies, if to write a story, so we have these questions that take you through it, and they really, really try to point out, hey, where was I brave in that story? But to gain that new perspective, you might need somebody to help you. And that's where our coaches all come in, ladies. And so Jodi is one of them. We have other coaches that can help you walk through different situations, depending on the type of situation it is. But they might be able to, if you have told a story and it's not really moving you forward, and it's not sitting right, and it's just looping like Jodi was talking about, maybe it's time to reach out to someone, or just write it for yourself and see what
Yes.
happens. Yeah, that's really great. And it looks like Sandy says, such a powerful mindset in the midst of a difficult situation, to pause and look at it from the perspective of being kick-ass, brave warrior.
Yeah. Exactly.
One of our events, we're all going to be shiny warriors with, we'll all be dressed up as that and see whatever.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, your sword or your armor, or whatever that looks like. And just,
Yeah.
Jodi, as you were talking too, what does it look like to walk in that, hey, I was brave. I am brave.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I think as I applied it later in my life, as I was writing, one of the questions asked about, something about how did this story like help you in another part of your life or something like that. And for me, I feel like as we are dealing with things, sometimes we're not even aware. We are just dealing with whatever we're dealing with, right? I mean, we're doing what we need to do.
Right.
And so sometimes it's in the reflection that we find
Yeah.
that's when we can look back and say, wow, I did that. Like I didn't even know at the time that I had that ability, right? And so I think when you are walking through it, sometimes the being brave part is just like doing what you need to do in the moment,
Yeah.
and not thinking I have to be brave right now. Because in my experience, I never like was sitting there going, oh, I have to be brave. I just did what I needed to do.
To
And then
survive.
I could look, yeah. And then I could look back and recognize it. And so I think the reflection piece it's really helpful, because it's like I said before, when we don't have an awareness of those parts of ourselves that, like, we all have multiple sides and parts of us that come through at different times. And when we don't have the awareness of it, I think we feel very just, not knowing. We have uncertainty about ourselves, about who we are. And, we can like draw the wrong conclusions about ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can have a story even about ourselves that doesn't include being courageous, just the way that we've, gone through things. And so that, I think another big benefit of just even answering these questions for oneself is that you do look back and recognize those parts of you that came through at different times. And that reflection then just gets you to know yourself better. And I don't know about you, Karen, but I was so busy doing all the things that I thought I needed to do to get approval and do, whatever expectations were, I thought, placed upon me by others. I was so busy trying to meet those and trying to do all the things that I didn't really know myself very well until really in the last 5 or 10 years or so. I always admire, like, I have 3 daughters in their 20s, and I feel like they know themselves so much better than I did when I was in my 20s. They have so much more self-awareness. They have so much more confidence. And I mean, that generation they came to play. They do not take anything from anyone. And for me, I think that people pleasing piece was really a big aspect of my identity. And this is another example of writing that story out and recognizing, okay, who am I really? Like, who was I being in all those patterns over time? But like, who am I and who do I want to be? Right. And that's something I think, at least for me, I feel like as Gen X or whatever, we're really having this time of this awareness. And I don't know if it's just a lot of things converging, if it's just our generation, and because we were raised in those time frames, or what it is. But all I know is I'm glad to be in a place where I'm like, okay, now this makes sense. And I know who I am, and I know what I want. And this story I can tell can be, this is the courageous part of me. This is the brave part of me. And she's part of who I am. And she's going to be as I go forward. So that yeah, if anybody can write that down, like that, the story, those questions, and take away a feeling of knowing who they are more and knowing that they have courage in them already, it's it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And thank you for sharing that, to get to know who you are a little bit better. Isn't that something? And ladies, not only that, it also is your book of proof, as Jodi was talking about too. You write the story, again, whether you write it for just for you or to share the inspiration like Jodi is, because there's so many takeaways. There's little pieces that you'll grab onto. And it's like, you know, I may not have been in that same circumstance, but I felt that too. And that's some of the shared experiences that we have, is those emotional experiences that we all share as women, as we go through things, and then to identify what we've gone through and to recognize, oh wait, I was brave in that. And so Jodi, as we close out, is there something you would like to leave the ladies with?
Yeah, I think it's that last message, the title of the story, that I think every one of us, I think maybe women might read stories and say, "Oh, I didn't go through something like that," or I didn't experience this or that." But I think like you said at the beginning, we all have a story of being courageous, and maybe that is just like one of the very smallest things, and yet that's a huge thing. And I think we have to honor that. We have to honor and recognize all the places where we're showing up brave in the world. And it is in you. You have it in there. It's in there already.
Excellent. Ladies, it is within you. You are brave. You are courageous. Come share your story here at Fave. You can go to favelifestyles.app, hit the little button that says share a story, or if you just need to be inspired, come read a story. And there's so many ways for women to come and be a part of this mission of hashtag celebrating 1 million women. Come and sponsor, inspire. We have these little cute little bundles of joy now that you can write an inspiration message, and it can be right next to somebody's computer every single day for a little inspiration, because you know what? We are all still walking through brave stories. They don't end. Unfortunately,
That's for sure.
we need to know that our brave girlfriends are thinking about us, and it's like, oh my gosh, yes. And so this one that's next to mine is forgiveness opens your heart to loving yourself. And so we all have these little inspirational little things that kind of get us through our days. And so you'll be able to read the stories, and being brave, hashtag celebrating 1 million women in their courage. And ladies, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing your brave story. All right, girls. But thank you, Jodi.